he kept like giving me alcohol, a lot of it, and was really pressuring me. But I was just like, I got to the point where I was so drunk that being pressured, I just kept drinking more.
And at this point, I was like pretty. I don't know if wasted would be the correct word, but I was drunk.
It just
I also
seemed like
later
not a
found
big
out
deal
that-
because we went back to the party and we were drinking more. And eventually, I wanted to go home to the dorms,
so I was
but none of
not
my
really
friends were
able
there.
to,
So
I guess.
Body.
I knew
I
I
couldn't
wasn't
really like
able
understand
to
what was
walk
happening, and I
myself
was kind of
home.
just dismissive of
So
everything.
he
And
said,
then,
"I'll
yeah,
walk you."
I had very low self-esteem, didn't drink much in high school, didn't go to parties really at all, and I was kind of looking to have a fresh start. And I was under the assumption that you had to drink alcohol in order for boys to like you.
And this is somebody that was one of my best friends at school's roommate. The roommate is who I usually went to kind of parties with. It was just a couple weeks into school. So
It was kind of my first time partying in a couple of months. I went out with them. We were hanging out, having a good time. And we were just drinking more, playing some beer pong, having a great time. And then eventually we kind of were going from room to room, and then we all kind of got separated.
So there's this guy who was flattering me outside of my dorm building one time, and hearing flattery was like a big deal for me because I hated myself. And so he invited me to a party, and I went to his dorm first with actually a couple friends, but he kept like giving me alcohol, a lot of it, and was really pressuring me. But I was just like, I got to the point where I was so drunk that being pressured, I just kept drinking more.
I never touched the drink, so I didn't know like what she was putting into it. I knew it was vodka, but I didn't know how she was making it. She was mixing it with Coke, but that's all I really knew. So I got pretty, I guess, tipsy, I guess you'd call it.
And I eventually ran into a friend who I knew from first semester of school who I hadn't seen in a while. And I trusted him, so we were hanging out and he was giving me more shots and we were drinking more. And we were just reminiscing on all the good times because we used to hang out a lot together.
And it's really spotty because I was that inebriated. And he took me back to his dorm, and I don't really remember ever saying yes. I don't really remember having an opinion or a decision about the sex, but I remember it happening, and I remember him forcing us not to use a condom, and I remember doing things that made me feel very uncomfortable.
And my roommates stayed towards the back of the line, and me and this person went towards the front of the line. And when we got towards the front of the line, she expressed that she had to go to the bathroom. And at this point, I was like pretty, I don't know if wasted would be the correct word, but I was drunk. I also later found out that there was date rape drugs in the drink.
And we were drinking more. And eventually I wanted to go home to the dorms, but none of my friends were there. So I knew I wasn't able to walk myself home. So he said, "I'll walk you home."
I kind of just didn't think about it again in terms of thinking about it in that it was a rape or anything. I just thought that was drunk sex. That's what you do in college, right? And regardless of how uncomfortable I felt. But ever since, even though I had a lot of sex my freshman year, ever since, that was the one incident, the first incident at college that I've had flashbacks about. I see him around and I feel uncomfortable. He's in one of my classes now, 2 years later. And after learning about consent, I realized what happened to me wasn't consensual.
And they were checking for MIT IDs. And since I'm not an MIT student, I don't have an ID. So I was like, no, I go to Emerson. And he's like, all right, I have to show you something. And that's when he brought me back to what I believe to be now was like a computer room or a room on the first floor of the fraternity house. And that's when like I didn't realize this until later, but that's when this other person who brought me to the party was in there as well. And he and she raped me.
It was just the two of us alone in my dorm room. And so he kept trying to do stuff with me, and I kept on saying no, that I had a boyfriend, that I didn't like him that way. And he kept on trying to coerce me into having something with me that I didn't want. And I couldn't even remember. It was just such spotty, like fading in and out, passing in and out. All the alcohol that I drunk that he'd given me was just mixing in my mind, and I don't even really remember half the stuff that was happening. And I just remember sitting there and just fading in and out as he tried to force himself on me. And then I remember passing out and waking up to him raping me.
1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted or raped in their lifetime.
Every 2 minutes, someone in this country is sexually assaulted.
97% of rapists will never spend a day in jail.
Consent doesn't necessarily mean no, but it means that there should be a yes.
It's basically 2 people equally saying yes to doing something.
Consent is not being silent, but saying yes.